Reading Truth in Lending Act directly out of the Code of Federal Regulations, that's CFPB's 1026. I'm reading part 13, 1026.13, and that part is about billing error resolution. A defines billing error. For purposes of this section, the term billing error means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 1. A reflection on or with a periodic statement of an extension of credit that is not made to the consumer or a person who has an actual, implied, or apparent authority to use the consumer's credit card or open-end credit plan. 2. A reflection on or with a periodic statement of an extension of credit that is not identified in accordance with the requirements of 1026.7 A2 or B2 as applicable and 1026.8. 3. A reflection on or with a periodic statement of an extension of credit for property or services not accepted by the consumer or the consumer's designee, or not delivered to the consumer or the consumer's designee as agreed. 4. A reflection on a periodic statement of the creditor's failure to credit for property or services not accepted by the consumer or the consumer's designee, or not delivered to the consumer or the consumer's designee as agreed. 4. A reflection on a periodic statement of the creditor's failure to credit properly a payment or other credit issued to the consumer's account. 5. A reflection on a periodic statement of a computational or similar error of an account nature that is made by the creditor. 6. A reflection on a periodic statement of an extension of credit for which the consumer requires additional clarification, including documentary evidence. 7. The creditor's failure to mail or deliver a periodic statement to the consumer's last known address if that address was received by the creditor in writing at least 20 days before the end of the billing cycle for which the statement was required. B. Billing error notice. A billing error notice is a written notice from a consumer that 1. is received by a creditor at the address disclosed under 1026.7 A9 or B9 as applicable, no later than 60 days after the creditor transmitted the first periodic statement that reflects the alleged billing error. 2. Enables the creditor to identify the consumer's name and account number. And 3. To the extent possible, indicates the consumer's belief and the reasons for the belief that a billing error exists, and the type, date, and amount of the error. C. Time for resolution. General procedures. 1. The creditor shall mail or deliver written acknowledgement to the consumer within 30 days of receiving a billing error notice, unless the creditor has complied with the appropriate resolution procedures paragraphs E and F of this section as applicable within the 30-day period. And 2. The creditor shall comply with the appropriate resolution procedures of paragraphs E and F of this section as applicable within 2 complete billing cycles, but in no event later than 90 days after receiving a billing error notice. D. Rules pending resolution. Until a billing error is resolved under paragraph E or F of this section, the following rules apply. 1. Consumer's right to withhold disputed amount. Collection action prohibited. The consumer need not pay, and creditor may not try to collect any portion of any required payment that the consumer believes is related to the disputed amount, including related finance or other charges. If the cardholder has enrolled in an automatic payment plan offered by the card issuer and has agreed to pay the credit card indebtedness by periodic deductions from the cardholder's deposit account, the card issuer shall not deduct any part of the disputed amount or related finance charge or other charges if a billing error notice is received any time up to 3 business days before the scheduled payment date. 2. Adverse credit reports prohibited. The creditor or his agent shall not, directly or indirectly, make or threaten to make an adverse report to any person about the consumer's credit standing, or report that an amount or account is delinquent because the consumer failed to pay the disputed amount or related finance or other charges. 3. Acceleration of debt and restriction of account prohibited. A creditor shall not accelerate any part of the consumer's indebtedness or restrict or close the consumer's account solely because the consumer has exercised in good faith rights provided by this section. A creditor may be subject to forfeiture penalty under U.S. Code 1666E for failure to comply with any of the requirements of this section. That's Chapter 15. So I don't know what agency releases that law. But anyway, 4. Permitted creditor actions. A creditor is not prohibited from taking action to collect any undisputed portion of the item or bill, from deducting any disputed amount and related finance or other charges from the consumer's credit limit on the account, or from reflecting a disputed amount and related finance or other charges on a periodic statement, provided that the creditor indicates on or with the periodic statement that payment of any disputed amount or related finance or other charges is not required pending the creditor's compliance with this section. E. Procedures if billing error occurred as asserted. If a creditor determines that a billing error occurred as asserted, it shall, within the time limits in paragraph C2 of this section, 1. Correct the billing error and credit the consumer's account with any disputed amount and related finance or other charges as applicable, and 2. Mail or deliver a correction notice to the consumer. F. Procedures if different billing error or no billing error occurred. If, after conducting a reasonable investigation, a creditor determines that no billing error occurred or that a different billing error occurred from that asserted, the creditor shall, within the time limits in paragraph C2 of this section, 1. Mail or deliver the consumer an explanation that sets forth the reasons for the creditor's belief that the billing error alleged by the consumer is incorrect in whole or in part. 2. Furnish copies of documentary evidence of the consumer's indebtedness if the consumer so requests. And 3. If a billing error occurred, correct the billing error and credit the consumer's account with any disputed amount and related finance or other charges as applicable. Creditor's rights and duties after resolution. If a creditor, after complying with all of the requirements of this section, determines that a consumer owes all or part of the disputed amount and related finance or other charges, the creditor, 1. Shall promptly notify the consumer in writing of the time when payment is due and the portion of the disputed amount and related finance or other charges that the consumer still owes. 2. Shall allow any time period disclosed under 1026.6A1 or B2V as applicable, and 1026.7A8 or B8 as applicable, during which the consumer can pay the amount due under paragraph G1 of the section without incurring additional finance or other charges. 3. May report an account or amount as delinquent because the amount due under paragraph G1 of the section remains unpaid after the creditor has allowed any time period disclosed under 1026.6A1 or B2V as applicable, and 1026.7A8 or B8 as applicable, or 10 days, whichever is longer, during which the consumer may pay the amount, but 4. May not report that an amount or account is delinquent because the amount due under paragraph G1 of the section remains unpaid. If the creditor receives within the time allowed for payment in paragraph G3 of the section further written notice from the consumer that any portion of the billing error is still in dispute, unless the creditor also, Roman numeral 1 through 3, 1. Promptly reports that the amount or account is in dispute, 2. Mails or delivers to the consumer at the same time the report is made a written notice of the name and address of each person to whom the creditor makes a report, and 3. Promptly reports any subsequent resolution of the reported delinquency to all persons to whom the creditor has made a report. H. Reassertion of billing error. A creditor that has fully complied with the requirements of this section has no further responsibilities under this section other than as provided in paragraph G4 of this section if a consumer reasserts substantially the same billing error. And Roman numeral I, relation to Electronic Fund Transfer Act or Reg E. If an extension of credit is incident to an electronic fund transfer under an agreement between the consumer and the financial institution to extend credit when the consumer's account is overdrawn, or to maintain a specified minimum balance if the consumer's account a creditor shall comply with requirements of Reg E governing error resolution rather than those of paragraphs A, B, C, D, C, E, F, and H of this section. No D. Do I have time for part 14, determination of annual percentage rate? Sure. A, general rule. The annual percentage rate is a measure of the cost of credit expressed as a yearly rate. An annual percentage rate shall be considered inaccurate if it is not more than 1/8 of 1% above or below the annual percentage rate determined in accordance with this section. An error in disclosure of the annual percentage rate or finance charge shall, in itself, be considered a violation of this part if 1 or 2. 1. The error resulted from a corresponding error in a calculation tool used in good faith by the creditor, and 2. Upon discovery of the error, the creditor promptly discontinues use of that calculation tool for disclosure purposes and notifies the Bureau in writing of the error in the calculation tool. A. Annual percentage rate in general. Where one or more periodic rates may be used to compute the finance charge, the annual percentage rate to be disclosed under purposes of 1026, 60, 40, 6, 7A4 or B4, 9, 15, 16, 26, 55, 56 shall be computed by multiplying each periodic rate by the number of periods in a year. C. Optional effective annual percentage rate for periodic statements for creditors offering open-end credit plans secured by a consumer's dwelling. A. Creditor offering an open-end plan subject to the requirements of 102640 need not disclose an effective annual percentage rate. Such a creditor may, at its option, disclose an effective annual percentage rate pursuant to 1026.7A7 and compute the effective annual percentage rate as follows. 1. Solely periodic rates imposed if the finance charge is determined solely by applying one or more periodic rates at the creditor's option, either I, by applying each periodic rate by the number of periods in a year, or room numeral 2, by dividing the total finance charge for the billing cycle by the sum of the balances to which the periodic rates were applied and multiplying the quotient expressed as a percentage by the number of billing cycles in a year. 2. Minimum or fixed charge but not transaction charge imposed. If the finance charge imposed during the billing cycle is or includes a minimum, fixed, or other charge not due to the application of a periodic rate other than a charge with respect to any specific transaction during the billing cycle, by dividing the total finance charge for the billing cycle by the amount of the balances to which it is applicable and multiplying the quotient expressed as a fraction by the number of billing cycles in a year. If there is no balance to which the finance charge is applicable, an APR cannot be determined under this section. Where the finance charge imposed during the billing cycle is or includes a loan fee, points, or similar charge that relates to opening, renewing, or continuing an account, the amount of such charge shall not be included in the calculation of the annual percentage rate. 3. Transaction charge imposed. If the finance charge imposed during the billing cycle is or includes a charge relating to a specific transaction during the billing cycle, even if the total finance charge also includes any other minimum, fixed, or other charge not due to the application of a periodic rate, by dividing the total finance charge imposed during the billing cycle by the total of all balances and other amounts on which a finance charge was imposed during the billing cycle without duplication, multiplying the quotient expressed as a percentage by the number of billing cycles in a year, except that the APR rate shall not be less than the largest rate determined by multiplying each periodic rate imposed during the billing cycle by the number of periods in a year, when the finance charge imposed during the billing cycle is or includes a loan fee, points, or similar charge that relates to the opening, renewing, or continuing of an account. The amount of such charge shall not be included in the calculation of the APR. Such Appendix F to this part regarding determination of the denominator of the fraction under this paragraph. 4. If the finance charge imposed during the billing cycle is or includes a minimum, fixed, or other charge not due to the application of a periodic rate, and the total finance charge imposed during the billing cycle does not exceed 50 cents for a monthly or longer billing cycle, or the pro rata part of 50 cents for a billing cycle shorter than monthly, at the creditor's option, by multiplying each applicable periodic rate by the number of periods in a year, notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph C2 and C3 of this section. D. Calculations where daily periodic rate applied. If the provisions of paragraph C1, Roman numeral 2, or C2 of the section apply, and all or a portion of the finance charge is determined by the application of one or more daily periodic rates, the annual percentage rate may be determined either by 1 or 2. 1. Dividing the total finance charge by the average of the daily balances and multiplying the quotient by the number of billing cycles in a year, or 2. By dividing the total finance charge by the sum of the daily balances and applying the quotient by 365.